So you've decided to eat super clean. All you have to do is follow a meal plan or the specific instructions. You eat perfectly with monk-like discipline for a week, maybe 2, and then you have a busy day. Stress kicks in. Or the siren call of the Swedish fish is just too much to resist. Okay, let's try a more flexible approach then. Now, as long as you hit your macros, you can have anything you want. You're training like crazy, and on the weekend, you stuff yourself with pizza, donuts, and epic sushi and cookie fests, just like The Rock.
Is that what you think? You think?
The problem is, the cravings don't end on Monday. Soon, it's a slippery slope, and you're sliding down into the pie hole. And though you intended to mostly eat protein and veggies, your plan goes kaput. Today, I'm going to meet you in the middle. Let's take 2 popular nutrition approaches: clean eating and if it fits your macros, and weigh the pros and cons. And I'll cover a third option, flexible dieting, that hits the sweet spot maybe in between, helping you to stay on track and still eating foods you love. First, let's get into some short explanations. There's no one definition of clean eating, which is why it can be so confusing to stick to. But the goal of this approach is to avoid as many processed foods and sugars as you can, and to eat whole, nourishing foods like meat, fruit, and vegetables. Some people extend this to eliminate gluten and even flour and rice, and they cut out dairy as well. It's up to interpretation, but clean eating tends to be fairly restrictive. On the other end of the spectrum is an approach called IIFYM, or if it fits your macros. Let's say you've used my free macro calculator and you need to hit 150 grams of protein per day. Well, that could be chicken, it could be beef, or it could be a meat lover's pizza.
Pizza!
Technically, you are trying to meet your requirements for not just protein, but also fats and carbs, so your plate might need to be a little bit more balanced and reasonable, but that's for you to figure out. With this approach, there's no restriction on sugar, additives, or preservatives. It's just about fitting your macros. Somewhere in the middle is flexible dieting. This approach can go back and be attributed to Alan Aragon, and generally describes a middle ground between the concept of clean eating and if it fits your macros. Generally speaking, you'll fill most of your diet with clean eating foods. Then you fill a smaller portion of your diet with indulgent, entertaining, quote-unquote junk food that so often gets demonized or labeled as cheating. With this approach, you have a foundational understanding of what macros you need to hit each day and what calories you must adhere to in order to maintain weight, lose body fat, or gain muscle. By understanding your fundamental nutrition requirements, you can make room for any food that you would like to have. But the base of clean eating foods provides superior nutrients, satiety, and overall calorie management. I'm not here to advocate for one approach over the other, because some people do great following a very rigid plan, and others are well able to control for cravings and still fall into the if it fits your macro approach with what they eat. But there can be a huge psychological impact when we have to battle our self-will around nutrition. We tend to judge ourselves so harshly. Failure, disappointment, and beating yourself up around nutrition are so common in our culture. But our biology and our body's need for food is powerful. In other words, the problem isn't your lack of willpower and your moral failings as a person. It's that you may need an approach that works with your body and your mind, not against them. So let's weigh the pros and cons of each approach, both practically and from a mental and emotional standpoint, to see which one is best fit for you. Let's start with clean eating. A focus on nutrient-dense foods will probably make you feel great. Your digestion can improve, you may sleep more soundly, and your energy levels will likely throughout the day be much more level. Fewer foods to choose from can be easier to control and take away decision fatigue when you're making meals. On the downside, your cravings may be hard to contend with, and you'll need more control over your food. If you like to cook at home a lot and you hardly ever eat out with friends, you'll likely have more success with this approach. Mentally, you might get down on yourself if you quote-unquote slip up, since flexibility isn't part of this plan. It can be a slippery slope down the binge eating and Last Supper syndrome path when you restrict for so long and then have unplanned indulgences. Now let's look at if it fits your macros. More flexibility means you can say yes to almost anything. As long as your numbers add up to your target amounts, you should still see physical progress. You get to have industrial processed, hyper-palatable foods each and every day if you want. With processed foods, however, there is a lot more variability and inaccuracy on food labels that are going to tell you your calorie and macronutrient contents. Unfortunately, lower quality inputs means lower quality outputs often. Your energy might start to flag if you go heavy on the junk food, and your digestion might suffer too. You'll also still need to track your food closely. You have to be precise with your number tracking since these foods are typically very easy to overeat and overconsume. If you get relaxed and stop entering all your meals into your food tracking app, then there can be a bit of a shame spiral when you realize that you're just eating junk food all the time without limit. Now, flexible dieting is a nice middle ground. You'll have to get a clear understanding of your daily food requirements, from protein to calories to carbs to fats. But you get the benefit of having a diet of mostly clean eating foods that will provide you adequate nutrients and support satiety and energy balance. You can regularly include foods that you love without shame or guilt. This regular inclusion will help keep large cravings at bay. Some of you may find it hard to learn exactly what the right amount of indulgence is when you're doing flexible dieting so that you don't end up going overboard or struggling to get back to clean eating the next day. And keep in mind, you still need to track your food closely for some period of time to learn what balance and what flexibility is going to work best for you. Okay, next up, let's take a look visually at what these 3 approaches could look like on plates. Keep in mind that for this to be a proper comparison, we are going to control for total calories and protein each day. The amount of specific carbs and fats each day is not as important to the overall goals of most of you watching, but for the sake of keeping this consistent, we're also going to control for carbs and fats. In each example that follows, we're going to work with a diet plan that aims to get the following: 2,500 calories a day, 170 grams of protein, 250 grams of carbs, and 90 grams of fat. Here's what a clean eating day could look like. For breakfast, we're going to start with scrambled eggs, cottage cheese, and an apple. After our workout, we're going to have overnight oats with protein powder mixed in. Then for lunch, we're going to have chicken breast, broccoli, and potatoes. And finally, for dinner, we're going to have a salad mixed with avocado, some olive oil, and a ground beef burger patty on the side. Here's what a day of if it fits your macros eating could look like. And keep in mind, these are the same calories and the same macronutrients. We're gonna start with French toast, eggs, and bacon. Then after our workout, we're gonna have Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal with non-fat milk and some whey protein. For lunch, we're having a barbecue chicken pizza, about 2 to 3 slices, and Coca-Cola on the side. And for dinner, we're gonna go with pasta with red sauce and ground beef mixed in. And finally, here is a day example of flexible dieting, again hitting 2,500 calories with 170 grams of protein as the focus. For breakfast, we're having cottage cheese and scrambled eggs. For a post-workout meal, we're gonna have Greek yogurt with protein powder. We're also gonna add a little bit of Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal to the top and a banana. Then for lunch, we're back to having broccoli with potatoes, only this time we're putting butter on top and we're still having chicken breast. And for dinner, now we're gonna have ground beef with a side of avocado, and then we're gonna have our carbs in the form of buttered popcorn that we're gonna save for when we watch Netflix after dinner. So which is right for you? Well, you might want to experiment with multiple approaches or change things up at certain times of the year. At times when you're very dialed into your routine, you can try clean eating if you think a structured approach will work well for you. You can go for flexibility during the holidays or times of year when you'll be on vacation. Nutrition is a constant journey to learn more about what foods and approaches work well for you and what you end up struggling with the most. Personally, I love a flexible approach where I'm eating whole, unprocessed foods that I know work well for my body about 90% of the time for me, but I can still go out and enjoy a date night or a special meal without sweating it too much. I hear people say that weighing and measuring their food is so hard, it's restrictive, it's tedious, and it can feel like a prison. But the truth is that the more you know about your food, how much you are eating, the more freedom you may have to include foods you have been told are quote-unquote bad for you. A measured approach to eating might just be the ticket to the flexibility and freedom with eating that you've always been after. Make no mistake, you can overeat clean foods and you can undereat with cheat foods. The type of food that you eat and the amount of food that you eat are not one and the same. Getting to know these two concepts of quality and quantity and how they work together is a powerful bit of knowledge that can unlock food freedom for you. If you have any questions about these approaches or how to decide what's right for you, please drop them in the comments below. And be sure to visit the links in the description for more free nutrition resources from my company, Functional Bodybuilding.
All right, that's good.